welcome to Pricing College with your hosts Aidan Campbell
and Joanna Wells.
In today's episode, we want to look into a little bit of human psychology that I think you'll all have experienced. It's when people think they're paying the bill, when they're the person purchasing or buying a product or service, they often think that they're the boss. The old saying, the customer is always right, has it led to this a little bit? You know, to some extent, is the customer always right? That's a throwaway statement. Like that, fundamentally, they're not. And I suppose we want to look into why people think just because they're paying for something that they are the boss in that relationship.
Well, let's think about this. Okay, so even in terms of professional services, you've got quite a long sort of problem-solving pre-sales process. Could be a bit of a negotiation on price, establishing problems. It's quite a lengthy process, and I think in that sort of process, a lot of emotions build. There's a lot of anxiety about the problem state being solved, about timelines, deadlines, things getting done properly, all adding to this sort of tension, let's say. And then, once a deal gets signed, everyone there's a little bit of relief, but then it's back on. Okay, we need things to be done. But then there's a funny switch in power, and that's what we kind of want to discuss. And this happens not even just with professional services. It happens with sales teams selling products to businesses. Everyone's essentially buying something to fix something else, a problem of some sort. But when the deal's signed, is there a sort of a handover of power, even though perhaps the customers come to you for your expertise because you've got the products they really, really need to fix a particular problem? In spite of that, is there that handover of power? Do you lose something as a supplier, as a consultant or a professional service provider when you sign that deal? Some people say yes. I suppose from a personal perspective, I think not. I think when somebody comes to you with a problem, essentially you're the one who has the solution to that problem. You can fix that, and regardless, you should be paid for what you can do. It's been built up over years, but there is a overwhelming assumption out there that there is some kind of like debt to pay for getting the money for working with a client. Is that right? Is that wrong? Have you found that yourself? It'd be interesting to hear from our audience their view on that, especially with the rise of procurement and the difficult pricing discussions suppliers are having with procurement teams. How is that really changing the dimension of the relationship, even though they've come to you for help?
I sometimes think of it as if you're buying and selling a product, and we always talk about value-based pricing, you're charging a price that reflects the value that the customer gets. It's an equal relationship. The customer's getting something from the product or service that's equal to the money they're spending. So in reality, it's a win-win. If you're beholden to the purchaser, it almost insinuates that they're doing you a favour. It almost insinuates that you're overcharging, that the product or service you're providing is not worth the value that they're paying you for it, and that you're the one benefiting, not the purchaser. Which, to be honest, shouldn't be the way for anybody to do business. I would see that as a scenario that you're beholden to a purchaser if there's some level of corruption or bribery going on. If you're providing a product or service to someone, and obviously this has nothing to do with customer service, because you're selling customer service, solving problems, warranties, guarantees, those sort of things. And you do everything you can possibly do to rectify problems, etc. But at the same time, you're not doing the customer a favour. It's a professional arrangement where you're providing great value, great service, great quality to them. And, it's not a favour-based relationship. They're not your boss. They cannot realistically make you jump. The question is not how high. The question is is the terms of agreement that we agree to jump as part of this arrangement? Fundamentally, what are you selling? What are they buying? And why would you just roll over like a puppy dog just because someone tells you to? They're not your boss, and oftentimes, if you behave in that manner, it'll just get worse. They'll just start pushing you around. And you'll see this much more in a B2B environment than a B2C. When it's B2B, the person purchasing, the procurement officer, often often has no emotional attachment to the product or service they're buying. Often they're not the end user to that product or service, and so the relationship very much can be about the win in the negotiation, the win in that deal, and in that deal, then sometimes they can get, let's be honest, they can get a kick out of winning big and making you feel bad, and then it can be a power kick for certain people. Not all that common, but we've seen it, and I'm sure you have.
Yeah, I think when you said that, the phrase, they're not your boss, I think that's key to this. It's sort of when the exchange of money is handed over, is there sort of a latent psychological shift to feeling like you're an employee as opposed to, the person providing the solution to the solution provider, the expert? That person as it changed the shift in power, and there's like an employee mindset has taken over. Taken over the supplier, taken over the salesperson, or whoever's leading the solution delivery. And is there some kind of a latent, have the client picked up on that? Or alternatively, indeed, is it that you're feeling there's a shift in power because you're actually working with a client or who is fundamentally very hierarchical, old-fashioned. Their culture is all based on a very hierarchical structure where there's a leader and there are followers, and you have to toe the line to some sort of latent cultural norm that was you didn't really know existed in the pre-sales and the sales, the process. And then it's like, bang, it hits you, and you really get a taste of the client or the client's culture. And that often can be quite a shock. But I think the saving grace with all of this is that you've always got to remember why they came to you in the first place. They came to you for help. You've got the solution that they need to fix it. They may not have the answers to all their problems. If they did, they wouldn't indeed spend the money with you. So it's always reframing, remaining confident in your position and knowing your value. And this is intrinsic to value-based pricing, but also in life. Having those value principles is key to being a successful individual and a happy person.
Look, I think we give this good messaging. I think fundamentally there is something ingrained in human society that's very deep. If you go into a restaurant and you pay for the meal, or you buy a product, you go into an electronic store and you buy an electronic gadget, you pay at the counter. The person who takes the money generally says thank you. The person who takes the product generally doesn't. It's something I think ingrained probably from maybe the early days of capitalism or consumer society, where maybe the high society would buy products and services and just hand over money that they'd earned from aristocracy, and the tradesman selling it was of a lower social class. And perhaps I see that, that probably is ingrained somewhere inside people. You'll still see it in Britain, for example, where companies will say, they'll put a badge on their product or service that the consumer, the Queen or the Duke of Edinburgh or something like that has bought the product, almost as if the purchaser is more important than the person manufacturing it. And I think that somewhere gets into society whereby, when you're handing over that money and, people think they're the big shot, and that is something that sometimes can be beneficial as a customer service person. You want them to feel that way, because they can take their money elsewhere, obviously, and your business will not exist if you don't help that customer. But at the same time, are you, you're by no means beholden to that person, and it's of course your right to, refuse service if you want under certain legislation in different areas. But also it's like you're doing it through choice and you're not an indentured servant. So getting into a bit of politics there and moral philosophy, but that's fine, I suppose.
I think this all happens when you ask people for money, and this is why pricing is so important. You need to get the price point right, so the conversation set up well, because there's huge depth of tradition, rituals, psychological responses, emotions, as well as financial outcomes and results that occur from literally having that pricing discussion. So this is the depth of pricing. And I think it sort of revealed that, and it'd be great to hear anybody's feedback on that in the pricing community elsewhere.
Yeah, you came here for pricing advice and you got yourself a life lesson. So, say thank you. All right, like and subscribe, obviously, and share the message. Have a great day.
All right, thanks a lot.